Now, obviously, I am not advocating that a person with a long-term plan who doesn't observe the short-term demands of the religion is a better person, or I'm not advocating a person doing that. I'm just saying that merely fulfilling your short-term obligations in and of itself is somewhat missing the picture. So without dropping those short-term things, you'll see there are people with topi, there are people with a beard, there are people wearing kurta and shalwar. Some of them may be hufaz and ulama, some of them may be very righteous people. They fast on Mondays and Thursdays, etc., etc. But they haven't made this grand long-term plan. They don't have this ambition in their heart that they want to do something, right? Just like the Sahaba wanted to do something. Right? Just like Sayyidina Salahuddin Ayyubi wanted to do something. Just like the Mashayikh, the ulama wanted to do something. They don't have that in their hearts, right? And so far, I think the talk that we've had so far has sounded more like Stephen Covey, corporate training, more so than something that may be rooted in some sort of ilm. It may be something that sounds a little bit more, self-help, wellness, New Age type stuff than something that's rooted in the Deen. I wanted to share with the brothers the the introduction from the Riyadh al-Salihin. Right? Anyone not heard of the Riyadh al-Salihin before? Right? This is the Riyadh al-Salihin and the Fazail al-Amal, two very profound books. Because we see the very modest brothers in various efforts stand and read them, we think, oh, maybe this book is like this brother. These are really profound books, brothers and sisters in the Deen. It's really profound. These are really profound books. If you take time to read through them and reflect them in some sort of systematic manner, I recommend people go through them with the ulama. These books are no joke. But I just wanted to share with you just the introductory chapter, right? Sayyidina Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, where he says, Alhamdulillah al-Wahid al-Qahhar al-Aziz al-Ghaffar. Praise be to Allah, the one, the victorious, the possessed of might, the oft forgiving, Mukawwir al-Layli ala al-Nahar, the one who changes the day, who rotates the day over the night and the night over the day, right? The one who wrote, and it's interesting that he uses the word layl before nahar, he uses the night before the word for the day, even though he could have done it the other way around, because the Arifin, the Ahlullah, they have a secret hidden in the night which makes it beloved to them. And you can ask Mufti Sahib about that inshallah later on. Right? But you see again, right off the bat, the consciousness of time, how the change of the day into the night and the night into the day, right? The consciousness of time starts from the beginning. تَذْكِرَةً لِأُولِي الْقُلُوبِ وَالْأَبْصَارِ, right? As a reminder for the people who have hearts and for the people who have vision. تَبْصِرَةً لِذَوِي الْأَلْبَابِ وَالْإِعْتِبَارِ, as a sight, as a means of sight for those who have something substantial inside of them, something inside of them. They're not hollow people. وَالْإِعْتِبَارِ, and they're people who consider and think about things. الَّذِي أَيْقَظَ مِنْ خَلْقِهِ مَنْ اصْطَفَاهُ فَزَهَّدَهُمْ فِي هَذِهِ الدَّارِ. Those people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has woken them up, those people from His creation, Allah ta'ala has woken them up from this sakar, from this drunkenness that everybody else is in, right? This is a reminder for them. Those people, He woke them up from the drunkenness that everybody else is in. مِنْ خَلْقِهِ مَنْ اصْطَفَاهُ, those who He chose, right? Those who He chose. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the end of the day, the people who come toward Him are His chosen people. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the greatest of them. That's why He's Al-Mustafa, right? Man istafahu fazahadahum fi hadhihi ad-dar. And he mentions their sifa that He made them people of zuhud from this dunya, that they take very little from this dunya, the people who He woke them up. وَشَغَلَهُمْ بِمَرَاقَبَتِهِ وَإِدَامَةِ الْأَفْكَارِ. And He made them busy in His muraqabah, right? Who can tell us about muraqabah? We have some brothers, some big white turbans, they probably know a little bit about muraqabah. That they are constantly worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if they see Him. Right? They're constantly worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if they see Him, and if they don't see Him, at least they know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees them, right? Look at this wording from Imam Nawawi, right? Because we have the people who are haters, they hate on the qawm, and they also read these books. They say, no, Imam Nawawi was on our program, brother. He wasn't, he wasn't yelling people about bid'ah. He was talking about something else, right? And those are the people who stay close to what? Itti'adh, that whenever someone calls you to the right path and tells you the right thing, that wa'adh, right? That other people get bored of and say, Mawli Sahib is yelling at us again, right? They stay close to it. Idtikar, that reminder that when people remind them, say, I've already heard these 6 points or 7 or whatever, how many points there are, I've heard them before. No, those are the people who like to hear them again and again and again, right? And notice the emphasis on what? On considering, on thinking about things, the emphasis on tabsira, on seeing things, right? The emphasis on thinking about things, afkar, the emphasis on idtikar, on remembering things, right? Because it is the hadith, one of the commentators on the Riyadh al-Salihin, Ibn Allan al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, he brings the hadith, the athar of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that narrated by Sayyidina Abdullah bin Abbas radiyallahu anhu, that for me to spend 1 hour in thinking about the deen, and thinking about the deen is more beloved to me than spending the entire night in prayer, right? And tafakkur, right? Why? Because we're people who think, right? We're very deliberate people. It's not like you see, oh, it's Ramadan time, everybody else is going to Taraweeh, I'm going to go to Taraweeh with the ocean, like the tide, and then when the tide recedes, I'm going to come back, right? No, rather, everything you do, you should do it very deliberately. And the more deliberation and the more purposeful thought that you put into everything you do, the more weighty your amal will be, right? Because the amal are not counted Yawm al-Qiyamah, they're weighed, right? So there may be people with very few amal, there may be people with very few deeds, but Yawm al-Qiyamah, their deeds will be heavy. Just like the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he said about the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, that they are people that if you were to give the mountain of Uhud worth of gold in sadaqah, you would not equal just one mud, right? What was the mud? It was the 2 hands of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the 2 Mubarak hands of him sallallahu alaihi wasallam put together. It's a measure of volume, right? 1 mud of grain that they gave in sadaqah would be worth more to Allah than the entire mountain of gold that another person would give. Why? It's because they had this. They were very deliberate in everything they did. They were very pure in their niyyah, and they were very deliberate in everything that they did. Whereas we take things very lightly, right? So look at this emphasis, right? Look at this emphasis. Sayyidina Sarri al-Saqati rahimahullah ta'ala, right? He's the mamu of Imam Junaid. He's the maternal uncle of Imam Junaid, right? Sarri al-Saqati rahimahullah ta'ala, right? He was one of the mashayikh of the tariqah as well. He was the mamu of Imam Junaid, and he was his shaykh also. He said, this athar we narrated from Abdullah ibn Abbas, that to think about things for just 1 hour is greater in my eyes than spending the entire night in prayer. He said, for me to think about this deen, to reflect, to make tafakkur over this deen for 1 hour is greater than the ibadah of an entire year. And he says it's nothing other than taking down your tent from this dunya and pitching it again in Jannah. That's what you're doing. You're taking your tent out from this dunya, you take it down and you pitch it again in Jannah, right? So I mean, all these things I'm talking about, planning and thinking about the futures. I'm not just busting your chops here. This is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the sunnah of the ashab of the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah Ta'ala be well pleased with them, right? And Allah Ta'ala gave him, He said, He gave وَوَفَّقَهُمْ لِلدَّأْبِ فِي طَاعَتِهِ وَالتَّأَهُبِ لِدَارِ الْقَرَارِ. He gave them the tawfiq that they should be in His ta'ah, His obedience, and that they should prepare for that abode that is everlasting, that abode that is firm, it won't go anywhere. وَالْحَذْرِ مِمَّا يُسْخِطُهُ وَيُجِبُ دَارَ الْبَوَارِ. And that they should be cautious. These are the people, His Mustafain al-Akhyar, these are the people who are Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's chosen people. They're the ones who are afraid to make Him angry. And His anger will make wajib on them the Darul Bawar, the Jahannam. والمحافظة على ذلك ما تغاير الأحوال والأطوار. And those are the people who will keep firm on this, on all these things I just mentioned, despite the changing of ahwal and time, the changing of states and the changing of time. Right? Because it's really easy to be a Muslim when everyone's making dua and the khatam on the 27th night. Right? Now we're talking about Rabi' al-Thani when, you're sitting next to a good-looking girl on the bus or whatever, right? I'm sorry, uncles, I hope not to offend you. This is the house of Allah. But it happens. It happens, right? So when that happens, remember, Mawli Sabi said something to you, right? That these are the sifat that you have not just on that night when you're sitting and crying in the masjid, right? It's at that time too that it counts, right? He says, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله البر الكريم الرؤوف الرحيم وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله, that I bear witness that there's no God except for Allah, the righteous, the noble, the kind, the merciful. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is his servant and messenger, wa habibuhu wa khaliluhu, and his beloved one and his friend. Al-hadi ila siratim mustaqim, the one who guided toward a straight path. Wa da'i ila dinin qawim, and the one who called people to the upright deen. May the peace and blessings of Allah and may peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon him and upon all of the prophets, right? So salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi wa ala sa'ir al-nabiyyin wa ali kullin, and the folk of all of them, wa sa'ir al-salihin, and all of the righteous people, right? That's the doxology. That's the doxology. He hasn't started what he's saying, right? So, please don't be angry with me for that, right? But what he's getting to is amma ba'du. As for what the point we're trying to get to, قَدْ قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. He said that he didn't, Allah Ta'ala says, I did not create mankind and jinn. I did not create jinn and mankind except for to worship me. Bam. You just get straight to the point, right? You want a vision, you want a goal. What are you supposed to write in the vision planning for your long-term plan? What is the purpose that you're here for? Right? He just said it straight up. He didn't cut corners, he didn't beat around the bush, right? This is the thing you need to write down in your vision, right? One of the things that they tell you in corporate training, which is very intuitive and true, is that your vision that you have, everything that you do in your life, if it is bringing you closer to that vision, it's useful. If it's taking you away from that vision, or if it's not, it's indifferent. It doesn't take you any closer or any further away. It's a waste of time and it's harming you somehow. Right? So your vision, straight off the bat, he told you what? That it's to worship Allah, to be in the ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the reality is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created you for that, and you're going to do it one way or the other. You're going to do it in an easy place or in a hard place. You're going to worship Him forever anyway. Right? He says that he brings the ayah straight up. He says, well, I didn't create jinn or mankind except for to worship me. مَا أُرِيدُ مِنْهُم مِّن رِزْقٍ وَمَا أُرِيدُ أَن يُطْعِمُونَ. He said, I don't want any money from them, and I don't want them to feed me. Right? That's not the point of all of this. Right? He says, وَهَذَا تَصْرِيحٌ بِأَنَّهُمْ خُلِقُوا لِلْعِبَادَةِ. He said, this is an explicit statement by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that those people, those chosen people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, were created for His worship. فَحَقَّ عَلَيْهِمُ الْإِعْتِنَاءُ بِمَا خُلِقُوا لَهُ. So, isn't it incumbent upon them to show some concern for that which they were created for? Isn't it incumbent upon all of us to show some concern for that which we were created for, right? Instead of being sakran, right? That they're Christians and they go to church on Sunday, and they're Jews, they go to their synagogue on Friday night, right? Friday night is Saturday in their calendar, and in our calendar it's Saturday because the night comes before the day, right? Isn't it incumbent upon us that instead of doing what we do and having our deen like they have a deen, that we actually do it like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to, that we think about all of these things and that we plan all of these things out and we have this vision, and we then we subdivide our schedule, move from the macro to the micro, keeping this vision in mind that everything we do, from the 5-minute plan, the plan you make for every 5 minutes of your day, has somehow to explicitly tie back to that vision. Isn't that a good point, right? Instead of dying, because people, it's interesting too, right? All of us in this room, illa man sha'Allah, majority of us are from the Indian subcontinent, right? So when you're trained from the time that you're a very small child, I don't know, mashallah, a very religious group over here, but from somewhat of a what's not considered a religious background, right? People like me, from the time we were a very small child, you're trained. So, beta, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. That's what it's what you're trained to say, right? Doctor or engineer or whatever, right? It's usually a choice of 3 or 4 things that you can choose from, and you have to say one of these responses. And people actually start to believe that, right? And if you ask someone, what's your vision? They say, oh, my vision is to be a doctor, right? Why do you want to be a doctor? Well, because I want to help people, right? So if you want to help people, what if I told you another track, like you could be a medical administrator, or you could be one of 7 other things that will actually result in you helping people more than becoming a doctor, right? Would you rather choose those paths, or would you rather choose becoming a doctor? So no, I'd rather become a doctor, right? So then the reason you want to become a doctor is not that you want to help people, rather it becomes an idol in itself. It becomes a vision in and of itself, right? Now,